Welcome to the Catalyst for Growth podcast, a place where we talk about everything under the sun regarding the journey of the professional salesperson. Welcome the host of the C4G Sales Success podcast, John Kailunas II. Take it away, big guy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Kailunas II with Kevin Berwald, and we're here in the Vegas Content Studios in lovely Sin City. We love this place.
You know, this is a great studio. It really is. I didn't even know these things existed, but if you want to find technology and you want to get things done right,
Hire a pro.
hire a pro.
Yeah, we would have it all messed up if we did it ourselves.
Hire a pro like Show, our guy in the background.
Show the pro.
Yep.
So, Kevin, we're going to talk a little bit about the sales cycle and the anatomy of a deal and how advisors, one of the things I think, especially for independents, they don't, they come from if they come from a bank or a wirehouse, they had training there. But when you go independent, you don't have a lot of deal structures type training. So you've got to go out and get a professional coach. They can hire us. They can hire other people, obviously not as talented as us, but they can.
Right.
But one of the things that we see people that are getting leads, they're getting opportunities, and they're not converting them. And you and I look at this as a whole science, and there's certain steps you need to go through to convert a suspect into a prospect and a prospect into a client. And what we have done, and you've done this over your career at some very large and prominent insurance companies, you've trained all the wholesalers, you've trained all the advisors on the sales cycle. And speaking from experience, it's a great way for us to identify if someone's fumbling a deal or not converting something. We can always go into this process and break down where they're having problems and then fix it. But if you're not following a sales process or a sales cycle, and you're just shooting from the hip off the old yellow pad, number one, the clients are demanding more than that. But there's no way to know how you lost the deal because there's not a process that you were following. It's all off the hip.
It's also super difficult to self-evaluate. It's kind of like, we've all had these aha moments in our lives where, a mentor, someone who is, we're trying to, emulate, it's one of those times where we're in business meetings, and it's usually the after meeting when you're sitting around over a cocktail or a beverage or a snack, and we're talking, and someone mentions, sometimes to them it seems so small, but a light bulb just goes on in your head when you hear these things, and they make such a big difference. So in my career, a lot of it was in wholesale and distribution. We often found the best ideas came from those group formats where these ideas came out, and it was always the number one thing that people requested. They didn't want to hear from all the speakers. They didn't want to hear from, they do, but what they really wanted was they wanted time with the people who were really getting it done to pick their brain and find some of those aha things that grow their business.
Those nuggets.
Yes. So we have them as light bulbs on the sheet that we've created, which is called the New Perspective Client Sales Cycle. It's actually a piece that the first time I worked with something like this was in the late 90s when I was working at a company in Connecticut, and the guy who ran the division wanted me to create a sales process for all of their distribution. And he actually brought in an outside company, and they interviewed me for several days. They just asked me a bunch of questions about distribution and wholesaling. And then they came back with a guide and an actual training book that went through all the things we discussed. They took my thoughts and other people's thoughts and emulated and created a really cool piece. Well, when I went to my next company, we actually created a sales process for all the wholesalers and distribution. And that same thought process of that format is what we've now grown into for a retail situation, not wholesale or distribution, but for an advisor, so that they can actually look at these 60 some different points that have been created and thought about that can impact someone's business really over the last 30 years. These pieces have been put in here, and so now you have in this one document 12 big ideas that really work.
This client sales cycle, it really takes you to a professional level and to a higher level. If you're looking at these bullet points, and we won't get into all of them for time's sake, we'll stay at 30,000 foot level. But when you look at those and you start breaking them down and how you're presenting, how you're trying to move people to their end goal, try to help them move to their end goal. It's amazing to me how many nuances there are and how often those nuances aren't touched, and then the advisor doesn't know why he isn't.
Yeah, a lot of times it's forest for the trees. And you started off in the opening conversation with, we're working with, or hopefully we'll be working with a group in the near future that we have a proposal out to. Their biggest problem is they're able to use in their marketing to get financial advisors a lot of really good leads, which are not leads, but they actually scheduling appointments from doing seminars. And the biggest problem that they have is converting those leads. They're great at the seminars. The content's wonderful. Getting the appointment's wonderful. But for some reason, for a lot of people, there's a fall off in converting those prospects and turning them into actual clients. And there's some big aha ideas in this that we'll talk about, and that will help cover it. So stay tuned, pay attention, and I'll tell you when the big ideas come up, but we're going to probably try to touch on about 12 of them of the 60 or so points that are on this. And I would say, while we're doing this podcast and we're talking about this, look, one or two of these things is going to should resonate with you. But if you just pick one of them, one thing that we're going to talk about, and begin executing to it, then you're going to find yourself in a better place. It's just part of that, getting 1% better every day gets you to
It's the whole goal of this podcast, and that's why we're doing this every week.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, Kevin. So first, we want to set the stage, right? So what is it's design and construct your plan. What does that mean? That's the topic. So when you go to our website, catalyst4growth.org, and it's number 4, you'll see the client sales cycle on there, or a version of it. And you'll see that there are probably 10, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 bullet points under each of these topics. We're only going to cover one on each of these sections for time's sake.
Yep. So it's broken into 3 pieces. And I know you probably can't see this, but when you go to our website and you look for this document, you can find it. You could pause this podcast right now, go get it off the website and look at it and follow along if you like, or call us. We'll email it to you and we can talk to you about it. But it's broken into 3 pieces. And the first is set the stage. And I'll never forget. A friend of mine, Mark Magnacca, works at Allego, who's one of the co-founders. He was training to this, and he used the phraseology "set the stage." I mean, that's where I got that from. And he was setting the stage for a wholesale distribution company. We're setting the stage for a financial advisor. But it's just so important to think about, setting the stage as an actor, or you run a play or a production. There's so much work done behind the scenes. Or an orchestra, they always say, the conductor is just standing there, right, just waving a baton and waving his hands. But no one understands the hundreds and hundreds of hours that go into getting to that point to make everything look so seamless and easy when it's on stage. It's the same for financial advisors. So we find in Set the Stage, the number 1 section is designing and constructing your plan. And in designing and constructing your plan, the big aha, or the big idea in ours, is updating or creating your professional biography.
Yeah, we've had everyone that's done that with us, Kevin, has had incredible success.
Yes.
The only reason it doesn't work, and there's been a couple of advisors we've done it for, and they don't use it.
Right. So common.
They don't use it.
So common.
They do all the work. They pay us to help them with it. It comes out beautiful. It's printed, and then they don't use it.
Yeah, or they use it incorrectly.
Yeah.
So for an example, a professional biography that's done correctly is designed to only say the things that your intended audience wants to hear. So just a couple points on professional that's used as an introduction tool or used as a referral tool, but it's only saying the words and the thoughts, not too much information, just the right amount that person's going to say, that sounds like me and I need help. And I like the way this guy sounds in this professional biography. There's a lot more to it than just creating something that talks about your past.
Yeah, we have a whole section on our website with it, and it's everyone should go through that process.
Yeah. But why is it so important in designing and constructing your plan? The reason is because it makes them think about, before they get started, who their ideal client profiles are. It makes them think about what their value propositions are. And it makes them think about how they can convey those value propositions to people. And it's funny, if you don't stop and think about who you're going to market to and how you're going to market and how you're going to say things beforehand and write it into a document, it's super hard to say it. But once you put it in this document, it'll say it for you on its own, but now you'll be able to convey it. You've thought it through, and that's just a super important part to designing and constructing your plan.
Well, what I'm always amazed of it is that you write it and you construct it, and they're reading it as a third party did it. And it's always sort of funny to me that, when you said it in a seminar and you said it there, they're reading it and you're filling that void, that gap of,
Yes.
of who they think you are and who you are.
Yeah.
You're constructing that whole narrative, and the prospect or suspect or client is looking at it, and they just take a step closer to you. It's a beautiful tool. So
it takes 3 seconds for someone to decide whether or not they're going to do business with you when they first meet you, and most of it's subconscious. So that thin slice.
I think
of the
I
right words and
decided
pictures.
less than 3 seconds that I was going to do business with you.
That you were or not.
We're not.
Too late now.
Yeah, too late. We're in the coos together. So
let's go to number 2 and set the stage.
Yeah, which is preparation.
Yeah. So preparation, designing and constructing your plan is thinking about where you're going to go. Preparation is putting together all the pieces to the puzzle and thinking about what your actual communication strategy is going to be when you're with a client. So you'll see there's a notepad here that I have a notepad. I'm constantly taking notes when I'm working with clients or prospects or people when it's important. And the big idea is actually a note-taking strategy. Now, this sounds so rudimentary, and most people would think, well, is that really a big idea or not? But it's been proven with something called, and I learned this back in actually the 80s. I forget the company's name, but they were talking to us about a term that they called golden silence. And they said, if you could now you go back to the 80s, you didn't have all the technology we have today. Literally, it was notepad and pen.
Yeah.
But what we found out is if we talk to a prospective client and we let them talk, and all we said was, that's interesting. Tell me more. Can you elaborate on that? That is so good. And
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, and you just let them talk and don't ask them any questions. And you write notes down of their words so you can simply reply back with their words, what they said, not using your words but theirs. That people become ingratiated with whoever's taking those notes. And when I actually learned to use a note-taking strategy, I remember the first time I did it, I was challenged to see how long I could get people to go. It was actually more than 30 minutes that I could take notes, pages of notes, and how often people right out of the gate would say, "Thank you." And I was like, "Why are you saying thank you?" And they said, I don't think anyone has ever asked me about my business or tried to understand me before, and I feel like you understand me now. Guess what happens in that? So note-taking strategies are super
the number one thing retail clients are looking for from an advisor is that they can trust them. If you sit there and listen to somebody that intently, and you're taking notes, they're going to trust you.
Yes. So. And we've talked about this before, the opportunities. So just a quick aside, when I take notes, I put stars next to the big opportunities and question marks next to the questions that I want to ask. And what's interesting is I almost never have to ask the question that I wrote down, because they will actually answer the question if I let them talk long enough without me even having to ask it. And the biggest ideas, the biggest opportunities were never the first one. It's almost always the second or third opportunity that comes
never
up.
is the first one.
And it's important that you key in on the word opportunities, because if I can find more than one opportunity with a prospective client, that takes me to the next spot. And oh, by the way, once you capture those notes, you could keep them forever. And I can bring them back to a client to remind them. Remember when we first got together, all these notes I took? And I set them in front of them as a prop. They reminds them that I'm paying attention, I care, and I listen.
There's actually a quick story that Carlos Guzman did in another podcast that I got to host, and he talks about that the mother it was his client, and she passed, and he brought the kids in, adult kids in, and he was actually reading off her notes and her words, and the kids started crying because they're just like, that is my mom's voice. That is my mom's words. I know you knew her because I guess she was a pretty gruff lady.
Yeah.
And he literally captured that, and they asked for a copy of the notes.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
Yeah, he shared that in an earlier podcast.
I know the one thing that I treasure is I have my mom's Bible, and that thing has notes all the way through it. Every page is covered with notes, but they're her words, and I know what was important to her and how she was perceiving things. And you're right, talking about Carlos, it's her words, and I've got it, and she's passed. Oh man, it's just a big deal.
This is a, we're still on the first column here, setting the stage, and this is number 3,
Yep.
business plans and execution strategy.
Yep.
I think the biggest takeaway of this one is that advisors don't have meetings for purposes. They'll have a meeting to have a meeting, but they don't think of what the outcome is. Oh, I want them to be a client. I want them to sign paperwork.
Right.
It needs to be much more thought out than that.
Yes.
And if you're talking about your process and your business, that where do you expect them to be, and always end with some type of call to action. I know, Kevin, you are constantly working with advisors. I've seen you say it 100 times if I heard you say it once. And it's, what is the purpose? What is the call to action? What are we going to do? Because if we don't have that, there's no purpose for the meeting.
Yeah. And this actually is the precursor to actually being able to ask for the business or ask for someone to take action. I mean, the reason why, and you can use the word closing if you want, but the reason why most people can't close is they don't have anything that close. They very seldom actually have an objective. And so the key really in this third part of business plan and execution, which is the third part of setting the stage, building your business plan and being able to execute to it, is having a specific objective in every single interaction. And if I have an objective with you, John, and we're sitting here doing something, then I can say, hey, we'll when we go to the next spot on this, kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but these all kind of go chronologically in order. I can say, John, we're together today, and now that we've covered everything that you wanted to tell me, so that I don't take for granted that I understand your business or what's happening in your life, and we talk for a bit, and we're on an even keel. Then I'm going to tell you what my objective is today. My objective today is to do X, and when we're done today, if you agree, then we're going to ask you to take action. But if I don't have a specific objective, I can't say that up front.
No, you can't.
And I have nothing to close and nothing to ask for. And it's just such a big, it's so simple, but people just roll in.
I see that as one of the biggest mistakes. And, that people aren't doing like a pre-close. They're not setting the stage for what the client should expect.
Mm-hmm.
They're not moving the client or prospect or suspect in the right direction. So
Yep.
We're in the second row now of our new client sales cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Ask, listen, find.
Yep. So now that we've set the stage, we've got a business plan, we know what to execute to. Now we're engaging with the client. It's called ask, listen, find. And in number 4, the first part of ask, listen, and find is the opening conversation, words and verbiage. And I'm a absolute firm believer that the first meaningful words out of your mouth in a sales interaction will dictate how that sales interaction is going to end. Because we talked about it a little bit, but if I know what my objective is and I tell someone, if I tell you what the objective is and I'm going to try to get you down to the spot when we're done today, if it makes sense, we need to take action. Don't you agree? If it makes sense and you want to do this, it's important for you, it's important for me, we don't need to put this off. Let's get things going. And if my objective with you today is to get to X.
Yep.
And now they're going to say, well, how do you do that? So the big or the big idea in this column is addressing an agenda. And I've got WIFM expectations, which means what's in it for me. In other words, I've got an agenda. Now, let's stop for a second. Here's another one of those things that's forest for the trees, right? Should I have a professional agenda?
Every single meeting.
But I've been, if I've been in 1,000, I've been in 10,000 meetings, maybe not 10,000, but actually it probably is when you think about it, how many hundreds of meetings I've had over my career, and being with other people and watching people interact, how they never do. They don't have a simple agenda.
I always have a meeting agenda when I meet with a client, because you know why? And it's a cheat sheet for me.
Yes.
I use it as a cheat sheet because I build in what a lot of the things we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I build in a call of action. I also have it so it keeps us on track.
That's right.
So meetings, somebody doesn't go down a rabbit hole on politics for a half hour, right? I can pull them back. So there's always a meeting agenda. And I usually send that to the client before they meet. I
That's
sent them an
right.
email and I said, I just want to make sure that this agenda will cover all of the topics that are on your mind, because this is time that we're spending for you to help you further
So
your
important. So important.
retirement journey.
So, and the other thing is, I think one of the biggest mistakes I see when a client really wants to engage. I mean, if a client or a prospect is coming to see you as a financial advisor, or a financial professional, as it were, they're not coming just for giggles. They generally have a need. They want to accomplish
There's something on their mind, or something that's troubling them. There's some opportunity they don't know how to handle.
Yeah.
There's something that they have a question.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't come and they would Google
Yeah.
an answer if it wasn't a burning need.
Yes.
It takes effort to go to a business meeting.
And how disappointing is it for someone who wants to accomplish something and you didn't allow them to get there fast enough? There's so much business lost because, now going back to the agendas, and I would just tune into this as a super big idea. If I send my client an agenda before we meet, a couple days in advance, I can give them homework to do. Right? If they're new, I'm going to say, please go to my website. Here's my biography. Here's where you can find out more about me. Here's where you can find out more about our business, what our value proposition, our investment strategies are. Here's where to get all that stuff before you show up. Why on earth, if they can get all that today in technology set up in the agenda I send them, why can't they do that homework beforehand instead of when they're with me the first meeting? Why should I do 3 or 4 meetings when I can only do 2 or 3? It just doesn't.
I have never run the statistic, but this is just a gut feeling I have. When I send the agenda out and I ask for them to bring statements, they're much more committed to bringing the statements.
That's
because
right.
we have already reached out ahead of time. We've told them what we need, like maybe their tax returns or whatever it is.
Yes.
I think the success ratio of them actually doing that is much more, much higher than if I just done on the phone and, hey, bring your tax returns.
Yeah. Let's get together and talk about what you should dig up for our next meeting. Bupkis.
Yeah.
There's just no sense.
And they come with nothing because they couldn't find it. But there's something about having that email or that sheet of paper, if they print it out, that they're looking at it and there's some type of commitment there.
Yep.
And it's just an instinctive feeling, but I would bet the ranch that doing that, you have a much higher success level getting that material that you need.
And if you haven't done it before, agendas aren't tough.
No.
You create, it's just something you need. What's one of those little aha moments that make a big difference. But clients will thank you for it. They'll actually say, they've told me, thank you for having an agenda so I knew what to expect and I could be prepared when I got there. And they think so differently of you or us when we use agendas versus the times when we mess up, and sometimes we just don't. It doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But if you don't have it, things just, for me, doesn't flow. And I
and
can put the agenda in front of them and say, hey, here's our agenda. Is there anything you want to add to it that I'm not thinking about right now because you're most important, but then we're going to go through these points and solve X.
And like we've told this to advisors hundreds of times, 80% of that is standardized, the agenda. 20% of it's customized.
That's right.
And so, your agenda looks pretty much the same. You might hit some high points or some specific things of the individual, but it's at a high level. And once you do one of them, to keep knocking them out, it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
So we're now at number 5, Kevin, open-ended questions and strategic note-taking. I think we covered strategic note-taking.
We did, because we kind of covered that when we were talking about preparing your note-taking strategy beforehand. So you have a strategy and now you're executing to it. And golden silence note-taking is the big idea in 5. And then we move right to the identify the ideal opportunity, client need, or strategy.
Explain that.
Well, let's say we're taking notes and we've got 4 or 5 opportunities that we've written down. This is the new prospective client sales cycle. So this is a new person. And one way for us to make sure we get moving is we pick something that's most important for them to execute to, so we can prove how the job that we'll do for them, how we're going to essentially, I'm going to get my competition fired without saying anything bad about them. And so the question here is, when you're taking notes and you have opportunities, is using a strategy and basically saying what we have actually written down here is to tell the client, hey, the best way to find out whether or not we have business chemistry together is to go to work on one of these items. So which one would you like to start with today?
What's the most important item for you?
Yeah. But let's get started. All these things, if you kind of listen to the nuances, they all lead into getting that prospective client to become a client of yours. Even if it's a small action, any small action we can work on together, you've now got the camel's nose in the tent, right? And you prove that you're a better communicator. You prove that you're more professional, and you can't prove it unless you do something. It doesn't matter how, and you want the big stuff, but when you have multiple opportunities in your notes, you got to pick one, you got to go to work, and maybe you'll work on all 2 or 3, who knows.
All right, number 7 is position your best solution or strategy. This is also under the ask, listen, and find section.
Yep. The last part of ask, listen, and find is the big idea here is, how do you know if the prospect that you're working with, this new prospective client, is actually buying into what you're saying?
Body language, right?
Body language is one of them.
Verbal communication.
Verbal communication is another one. And actually, those are there's lots of great books on this, on not just reading body language, but actually using body language, and using it not to manipulate, although it can be done that way, but using it to actually convey your story better. Most communication is actually done visually. It's not what you hear. It's body language, right?
We actually, Kevin, have a bunch of those books. So, in the section of our website, it says, what we've written and what we read.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of those books. Chris Voss's book, the famous FBI negotiator.
Yeah.
That book is on there.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other books.
Yeah, I think it's called
that go through.
I Can Tell You're Lying, and is one of them. And I Know What You're Thinking. Or anyway, they're just amazing books. Yeah,
I couldn't grasp the title right now, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been probably 10 years since I read. I still have the books on my desk. But there's another way, an easy way to find out whether or not someone is, and if no one ever tells you, this is one of those forest for the trees things, right? If I have a proposal for you and we're talking about something, and John, and I hand this to you and we're talking about it, and as we're talking about it, you grab it with both hands and put it right in front of you, right? You do one of these numbers. You got it, and you're not letting go of it. And it's right here. Now that is what you can do. You have to watch when you're showing somebody something. I can think of a meeting we had in Miami. You'll remember this.
I know exactly the meeting.
So we
were working with it was a wholesale opportunity for us.
Yeah.
And we gave them we had an agenda set up for the meeting. We gave him all of our marketing materials, and he went like this, put it down.
No, he didn't just put it down. He went like this
and started talking about
what he wanted
to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Kevin and I, we passed on the deal. He was begging us to do the deal, and I just wasn't interested in, because I could tell by his body language that he did not respect what we were doing. He was there to sell us something and cram this down our throats, and we weren't buying.
So just remember, you have the ability with all the body language and all the other stuff, and communication, verbal communication, you have the ability to just take whatever you're talking about and pay attention as to whether or not they put it right in front of them. If they're touching it, they're not letting it go. Pay close attention to that, because if they're not, you miss something. You got to stop and backtrack. If they literally take your proposal and set it aside and they're not touching it anymore or looking at it, you got to figure out where you went wrong. And that's the big idea in that section.
In that meeting that we were just describing in Florida, the tone of that meeting changed completely.
It did for me, because I recognized
I realized it was a complete waste of time. And if you recall, I sort of sat there and I was leaning back in my chair, and then I just started firing questions, because I basically said this was a waste of our time. And remember that?
Yeah.
And it was a very awkward moment, but it's true. Why are we sitting here chasing each other's tail when you don't care? And this is a relationship oriented deal where we had to help and coach somebody.
Yeah.
And it was a total disengagement, and he lost us, and he keeps calling me back. So he is persistent, but
well, he's got that going for him. But I tell you,
we won't be doing business with that guy.
Well, maybe we should train him somehow so he recognizes never to do that again. All right, so now we go to the third column, which is close the loop. Basically, what we're getting to is, all right, now that you've set up, you've got no, we were right. Yeah. So they bought in, they understand, they got the stuff in front of them, they're holding on to your proposal, and now we go to closing the loop. And how do we actually transact? How do we make it happen, right? So let's talk about 4 or 5 big ideas that help you close the deal.
So number 8 in the close the loop category is quantify the value.
Oh, man.
And I think advisors do this I think the independent advisor misses this 8 out of 10 times. They want to show them how smart they were at managing money. They want to show them this or that, and they're not managing to the performance of the plan at the end, and the performance connected, the absolute performance of getting the client to the goal.
Yeah.
They want to show somebody that their alpha or their beta, their standard deviation, that's great, and look at what we did here. We saved you, $2,000 in taxes and all that. The client doesn't remember any of that.
Nope.
What the client remembers is how they feel and how you made them feel. And if they have confidence to get you in this end point, because this relationship, ladies and gentlemen, could be 30 years. And they're going to trust and they're going to build on that. And their value is not your great alternative slice of that you put in the portfolio that did 22%.
Mm-hmm.
But advisors brag on that. And what's amazing about when they brag on the upside, you never hear them say, "Wow, we lost 22 in that."
Yeah,
all."
you just shot yourself in the foot. And you're right when you say, people almost never remember what you said. Most of it, they'll remember certain things. They will always remember how they felt.
Well, we just did it in that example in Miami, right?
Yeah.
We told the listener how we felt,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a deal crusher.
Yeah.
And it would have changed sort of the trajectory of our company and some other things, but we just realized it wasn't our guy.
A wise man once told me, Greg Seacott, went back in the day when I was working for him, he used to say, the bad apples, just let them fall from the tree. Just let them go.
You
gotta let them go.
This is a little pearl of wisdom
Mm-hmm.
on that vein. Some of the best deals are the ones you don't write.
That's right. Yeah. When you look back in retrospect.
You look back at it.
So let's talk a little bit about the big idea here. It says it's not just quantifying the value, but the big idea here is make clear the value of taking action in terms of time, money, or fun. So what people only respond unless they have a gun to their head and take action based on three things: time, saving time, having more time, money. We all understand how money can motivate people, and fun, which includes family and religion. So if I can tie in what my proposal is to time, money, and fun, versus, a litany of data and performance and stuff like that, everything changes, because what we're really talking about is what's important to them. People don't want an investment portfolio that has a lot of numbers on it. Now they want it. They want the money, but the real question is what does that money do for them?
Money just gives you liberty, and to focus on the liberty and not focus on the dollars.
Yes, like our Mission Retirement book, the whole thing is we want to create that ideal vision of their future. And once they got that and they're excited about what they want to attain in terms of time, money, and fun, then we can give them the liberty to make sure they have a plan behind it. And that's what this is all about. And the other thing is, if you don't quantify the value, and I'll do a takeaway on this for anyone listening, if you don't tell them what your value is to them, they're going to pick it on their own. Well, think about this.
And you don't want them to do that at all.
Why would you leave that to chance?
You shouldn't.
Never.
Not if you're a professional. You don't leave it to chance.
Right. So
that goes back to number 2, being prepared, right?
Yep.
They're all interconnected, as you said earlier. But yeah,
Yep.
these action steps, they got to be definable, and they've got to be right there so people can see them and understand them.
And here's the action step. If you don't listen to nothing else made sense and you're picking something today, if you go back and look at your top whatever clients, you pick the number, and you go back to these clients and you just make a phone call. First you say, I wonder what I've done for this person in their life that I can call them and say, do you realize that you're one of my favorite clients? However you want to say that. But do you recognize that over the last 20 years, we helped your kids get through college, and now you're a grandpa and grandma. You've got grandkids you love, and you're in a position right now to be able to live the life you want to live. And we're now helping the rest of your family as well. Whatever those things are that you've had, do you recognize what we've actually done for you? Do you know how much income you've taken over the last, 20 years? Do you know it's like $800,000 of income? We paid off all your debts, big money. And now you're able to do those things that are most important to you, to have more free time. You don't have to work.
That's a powerful conversation.
Man.
And once you have that conversation, that just locks that person into you.
Yeah. But if you don't have that conversation, you're leaving it to chance. They may never even realize.
Somebody like you or I will come knocking on the door and do it.
Yep. Yeah.
and
So,
they won't have a client.
and
So
that's where you get referrals and all the fun stuff too, right? So let's go to one of my favorite steps, because this is getting to the close, right? And number 9 is in action steps of closing the loop or asking for the business, and it's the pre-close commitment review.
what's the famous Kevin Berwald line that you say every single time we work with an advisor? There's a couple favorite lines. You have, I'm from a small Midwestern liberal arts college.
Yeah.
Um, and then
I'm
you
a
also
poor
say,
Dutch kid
yeah, poor
from
Dutch,
mid-Michigan
yeah.
that went to a liberal arts college.
But you also say, and I'll just start this for you, if I can show you a plan
Yeah.
that is equal or better than what you currently have, will you do business with me?
You're close, real close. Now we nuance what we say.
I paraphrased Kevin Birdwell's quote. I didn't quote Kevin
Yes,
Birdwell.
I told a guy in the plane flying down over here yesterday. I keep forgetting whether I'm in Las Vegas or Tampa half the time. But anyway, we were flying over. Guy sitting.
Okay, I'll give you a clue. When you see just dirt and rocks,
yeah,
that's Vegas.
no doubt. Yeah,
in neon. Tampa doesn't have a lot of that.
Yeah. So sitting next to a guy, I've said this. I've said this at least a half a dozen times in the last month to different people in different places, because they always say, "What do you do for a living?" Right? Well, that's another thing we'll talk about it another day, how to convert that. But as I talk to him about it, I end up saying, I think the number one thing that I teach people that they take action on that makes them the most amount of money, or makes me the most amount of money, is a pre-close commitment. And what I mean by that is, if I've created a proposal for somebody, we've done all the work so far. We've set the stage, ask, listen, find. We put everything together. We're getting ready. We've quantified the value. We're right there, right? And now I've got this proposal in front of them that we want it, whatever we're closing on, whatever we're going to ask them to do. And it even goes back to the, I have it in front of me, whether or not they're grabbing it. I'm paying attention if they want it. One guy I was talking to actually is like, he does flooring for a whole bunch of businesses around the country, and specialized flooring. And they put together these proposals, and he was telling me the story that they show these proposals and how often that proposal goes to a competitor and they end up implementing it somewhere else. Same thing with financial advisors, right? Some guy shows them something that's really great, and then they take it to their guy, right? And we can't let that happen. We just did all the work. So we're right there on the cusp of it. And I'll actually say to somebody, or teach someone to say, look, we've done all this work. We're aligned. We know what this is worth, quantify the value of it. And this is this is the final steps right here. But I'm going to tell you right now, before I show this to you, I want your commitment that if it's as good or better than anything else you've seen, and it fits like we know it will or should, then I want your commitment that you're going to take action with me to start implementing today. So that's another way of saying it. Because I'm not going to give this to you. I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to say this, but I'm not going to give him. I don't want to just show him and say, what do you think? It's just like an agenda where it gives them the expectation of what's going to happen next. People want to know what's going to happen next, or else they get uncomfortable. So when I say I'm going to show it to you, this is what's going to happen. And if it's as good or better, including your existing advisor, then I'm going to ask you to take action with me today. And once in a while, they'll say, well, gee, I don't know. And I say, well, gee, I'm not showing it to you then. Because you're probably not going to get them anyway. But at least 8 or 9 times out of 10, they just say, yep, you got it.
I can't think of a time that no one has said no to that.
Yeah. For some people, because maybe they don't like them. Somehow, but for me, I honestly have never had anyone say no, ever. Once you start doing it. And if you don't get a lot out of what we said today, you learn how to do a pre-close commitment. Hallelujah. Because most people aren't closing 50% of their clients. This is one of the things that we try to help these people with seminars that we filter in, to use a pre-close commitment actually in the seminar.
Yeah.
To tee it up in the beginning of the seminar, so that when they get to someone, the client's already thinking, I'm going to see him and he's going to ask me to take action.
All right. So step 10 out of the 11 is follow through and exceeding expectations.
Yeah. So many things.
This is a very simple concept, but there's a lot to it.
People fall apart. me personally, I fall on this a lot of times. So this is kind of me needing to eat my own cooking, because sometimes I close, people are ready to go, and all of a sudden there's the little details of the implementation plan of what you got to do and what I got to do to make sure that things meet expectations for a specific time and a date. So everybody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Here's like when we went through the book together, right? We had expectations of when things would get done, but sometimes it wasn't communicated well, for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter. But we felt uncomfortable because we did not have the right expectations and things that need to be done. And there's little things that can separate you from everyone else. And here it is, man. Handwritten thank you notes and messages.
I'm huge about that. I do that all the time.
I save your handwritten notes to me. I actually have them in my office. I love thank you notes and handwritten notes. I have files of them from the last 35 years.
I've taken one of your ideas. When people do Zooms with you, you can see there's a whole bunch of notes behind you that you have on the wall. I've started a gratitude wall like that. I'm just facing it. I'm not, it's not behind me. It's in front of my desk.
Yep.
So I can practice the art of gratitude
and that's it.
Because I look at these, and I've written, just recently I've written some notes to some mentors, just thanking them.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that I've gotten back is just gold. It brings tears to my eyes that somebody I respect so much is actually taking the time to reply to my feelings about them and the relationship, and that it was mutually shared.
Yep.
It was just really powerful.
Yep.
Closing up here,
but wait, I just want to hit before we get to this next 2 points, because I know we're right on time, but talk about sometimes when you send, you're a hockey fan, and one of the things I think is the strongest is a handwritten note that is a picture of a client at a client event, like at a hockey game with the Red Wings or something like that. Because if I can get a picture of you and me together at a hockey game or whatever event, people.
We do it in bird hunting. We take somebody up bird hunting, and they snap a photo, and then you write it or you put it in a frame and mail it.
Yep.
And you know what? It amazes me. If you put it in a frame, 9 out of 10 times it is in their office, and when you go visit them, there's a picture of you and that person in bright orange in a frame on their shelf. It's crazy.
Golfing, whatever it is, fishing, whatever you're doing, get a picture of you and the client together. Because they won't always remember what you talked about. They'll always remember how we felt, and you send that note to them, and then they're looking at you all the time and remembering you, and that's what you want. Okay, now we'll go to the last spot.
Yep. Number 11 is the next opportunity, the referral process. Mm-hmm. So just because you've got the sale, that's not the end of the sales cycle.
Right.
You're setting up future success by asking for a referral, and we have a whole training that we do with people on referrals and how they should go about doing it. But I don't think advisors all say they work off of referrals. Very few have a well executed referral plan.
Yep.
This is where sort of the cheat sheet, it puts it in front of you, so you can execute that and be on top of it, because there are things you need to do to earn that right to that referral.
That's right. And there's specific words that work. But if you go through this whole process, we're in the last box, right, of this new perspective client sales cycle, and you've just done everything right. You've set yourself apart. You've implemented. Everything is great, right? And because you followed through the right way, it's now you've taken it to completion, and now we're calling the client to check back in, or we're seeing them the next time for the first follow-up after implementation. And they're happy, and you remind them, you re-quantify the value, your professionalism is shining through. That's the time to be asking for referrals.
It's the perfect time.
And that's when you say what Mark Scheer told me a long time ago. He said, these are the words that work, is who do you know who? And specifically, pay attention to this last nuance on this list. So let's say I have an employer list, or maybe the country club list, or whatever, a church list, my own list. If there's people I'm trying to get a hold of that I know that the person's familiar with, I can ask for referrals and say, who do you know who could use my help? There's a better way to say it, but it's the who do you know who part, and that I need your help. But if I ask you who you know, and you have to think from your own mind, you might pull 1 or 2 or 3 people out. But if I lay a list of names underneath
it's a memory
your nose,
jogger,
and there's 20 names on it, and I know you know half of them, I go from getting 1 or 2 referrals to getting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Kevin, I watched you do this in our office when you were wholesaling for Pacific Life when you first got there, and you came in. You went down a rep roster and said, "Who do you know that would?" And I saw you do it with our advisors, and so you would get an advisor to introduce another advisor
Yeah.
to you, which obviously took away the scary wholesaler,
Yeah.
and a buddy's referring you, hey, you got to go out and talk with Kevin. He knows
Yeah.
his stuff. And
Quick
and it's
wholesaler
all work.
tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a wholesaler, you're in distribution, tune in to, just pay attention to what I'm going to say. Your best advisor, if he's a key center of influence in a broker dealer, RA, insurance office, whatever it is, if you can get the list of everyone in that organization and lay it in front of the center of influence, they'll start. You did it. You wrote notes over all. I remember it was amazing. I mean, thank you for that. But you weren't alone. When I was wholesaling annuities way back when, you'd say, well, this guy's got a whole bunch of business with X. He needs to move all this, right? So then I could literally take that piece of paper when I go and met the guy. I go, here's John. John wrote the notes on here that you have a bunch of these I should be talking to you about. They'd see your notes and be like, oh yeah. And guess what happened?
Yeah.
So
They
use
move the
lists.
business,
Use a list if you can. And the last one is going back to the notes. This is the last big idea. Let's review the other opportunities from our meeting notes. We're all done. We go back to the beginning. We get the notes out.
Just going through the process again.
What did we miss? What's the next thing to start with? And then if there aren't any other things to work on with the client, which there almost always are, something, right? We take care of that or get referrals, and then we start it all over again, going back to set the stage. So every campaign, every target marketing campaign you're working on,
Every review, everything, it's all through a process.
yeah, there it is, laid out. We only went through 11 or 12 of the big ideas, and there's 65 or 66 different points on here that you can think about to help you get where you're going. So the point is, what we were really hoping is you'd find one or two ideas that you want to really work on, you want to talk to us about, or don't talk to us, but figure out, find a mentor, somebody who can help you with those topics and get better.
And Kevin, I want to leave this thought with the advisors. If you're spending $5,000 on a seminar, right, and you get 10 leads, don't you want to take the best 10 at bats? Prepare yourself, go through the sales cycle, think about this stuff and position yourself for success, because each of those leads costs $500. Would you throw $500 out the window? Well, I guess we're in Vegas. You do that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you just throw it out the window? No, of course you would. That's insane. So becoming a professional requires a lot of work, and a lot of work by yourself. We're here at C4G to help you. Kevin and the first part of our career was make income. Now it's to make impact. And so if we can help you with anything we said today in the client sales cycle, anything resonated with you, call us, schedule a half hour at a time. We'll go through this with your staff, anybody that you think is worthwhile, and help you get better, because we want you to improve every day, just to get a little bit better each and every time. You can get all our information on catalyst4growth.org. That's the number 4.org. And we look forward to hearing from you. Again, thank you for your time today. We'll drop another episode next week. Kevin, we'll have another episode, I think, with you on next week. So
That's right.
We're excited to, peel back and get all the wisdom you have to share with the audience. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for your time today. We will have another content-packed session posted next week. Please check our website, catalystforgrowth.org, for our legal disclosures on the bottom of our homepage, if you're into that sort of thing.